the story from God's Word today that we're looking at from Luke chapter 7. We read the story. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And behold, a woman of the city, who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster flask of ointment, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. And when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answering said to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he answered, say it, teacher. A certain moneylender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon answered, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt. And he said to him, you have judged rightly. Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little. And he said to her, your sins are forgiven. Then those who were at the table with him began to say amongst themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? And he said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. What a touching story. But we're going to look at it today from three different points of view because there are three different main characters here. The Simon that he's talking to is not Simon Peter. This is the name of the Pharisee who invited him to his house. And then we have this questionable woman who's a part of the story. Then we have Jesus. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the story that we just read from each point of view of each of the three and tell the story as if they were actually telling the story in first person instead of this third person encounter that we read here in the Gospels. I've tried to be really careful not to embellish it too much or to add too much imagination to it, but just trying to fill in the pieces there. And so I'm going to actually be reading to you each of their stories. So instead of the pulpit up here, I'm just going to sit down in the chair and we'll just have story time here today. But again, this is a true story and helps us to think about where we fit in the story. You know, could we see ourselves? Could we see Jesus in the midst of this story here? So first of all, we're going to read the point of view from Simon the Pharisee. I asked Jesus to come over to my house for dinner. He had been causing quite a stir around here lately, calling himself a rabbi without any real training, insinuating he has authority to forgive sins, which is nothing but a blasphemy. And he's doing these miraculous healings, which we can't really explain. Maybe it's a demon doing it. Maybe it's some sort of hocus pocus. My colleagues, the other Pharisees, and I, we don't know how to explain it, but we certainly don't like it. Jesus is getting a lot more attention from the people. And there's even rumors going around that he's a prophet sent from God, like John the Baptizer, or even that he might have some sort of special link to the Messiah. We've been trying to trick him into saying something that will discredit him, but he's so sneaky. He comes up with a way to get out of every trap. But this time, I've got a plan. I'm inviting him over to my house. I'm going to feed him, maybe get him drunk a little, get him to relax a little bit at the dinner table, and somehow he would blow his cover. I thought, I'll get him good, and my colleagues will be there to witness it, and they'll be grateful forever. So a few of them came to my house while we were waiting, preparing to hear a great blasphemy that we would catch Jesus in. But just before Jesus showed up, this questionable woman of the night from town showed up outside my door. I asked her to leave, that with her reputation, she can't be hanging around my house. But she said she was waiting there for Jesus, that she was a friend of his. And it made me wonder what this so-called holy man had to do with her. I tried to shoo her away, but then the idea came to my mind that maybe this isn't a bad idea, that she's here after all. Link Jesus up with her, everyone will understand he's just a normal guy with hormones, and he's been having secret rendezvous in the night with women of her kind. So Jesus showed up. I invited him in, and I also allowed this questionable woman to come in as well. I was ecstatic at the idea that we're going to catch Jesus in this trap, that I just put aside all the traditional things that we usually do, welcoming guests into our home. Well, it's not that I really forgot. It's just that Jesus and this unclean woman, they are so unclean. I can't even believe I'm inviting them into my house. I could get into big trouble for that. But this is all for a good cause, a good purpose, because we're going to put an end to this Jesus stuff. So I didn't get out the water basin for them to wash their hands and feet like we normally do for guests. They don't deserve it. They're dirty scoundrel pigs anyway. But they came in, they sat down at the table. And then this woman, she pulls out this little jar of perfume, and she pours some of it on Jesus' feet. And then she starts crying for some reason. And then she let down her hair, a huge no-no, and wipes his feet off with it. The mixture of tears and perfume. And then she starts kissing his feet like she's some sort of crazy mad woman. Now we had seen it all. Yep, this was totally inappropriate. And now we caught them in this red-handed. He's letting her touch him. Oh, I wouldn't be caught near a sinner like this. They've got these sinner cooties that just rub off on us, and no way would I let her even get near me. I didn't say these things, but I was thinking them. And Jesus turns to me, and he asked for permission to ask a question. I said, go ahead. I said, you're a rabbi like me. We can discuss anything you like. So he starts telling a story about a landowner with two guys who owed him money. One owed 500 denarii, and the other owed 50 denarii. Neither could pay, so the landowner decided to forgive each of them his debt. Then Jesus asked me the question. He said, Simon, tell me, which of these two debtors will be the most grateful for what he had done for them? Well, I immediately responded with the obvious answer. Well, it's the one who owed the most. And Jesus started making a connection between this little story and this woman who was sitting at her feet, saying, yes, you're right, Simon. And this woman did for him what I didn't do. This woman, he said, gave him a warm welcome and washed his feet. Well, of course I didn't wash his feet. This was Jesus and this prostitute coming into my house. Did they think I was going to roll out the red carpet for them? They're disgusting. And now we know for sure what kind of man this Jesus is. Even though I tried to embarrass them both, they didn't seem too unhinged by it. But now there's no doubt of Jesus' reputation. He's a friend of sinners. That's who he is. He's not my friend. It's so disgusting. My other friends who were with me, they were also in disbelief. They couldn't believe what they had just witnessed because Jesus had gone too far. That Jesus went on to say that he was going to give this woman forgiveness for all of her many sins. And she had many, many, many sins. And he said that she would be very grateful and loving. And then he compared her to me. The boldness to insult me like that. He's the one with the problem, not me. I don't have some big long list of sins that need forgiven. How dare he praise her and insult me like that? The dinner party was ruined. But at least now we all knew where Jesus stood, and I washed my hands of him. Now let's retell the story from the view of this questionable woman. I had an amazing encounter with this man named Jesus. I was getting sick and tired of the life I had been living and the way I made my living. I'd had enough. It wasn't just that I was tired of servicing these men who came to meet me by night, but I was a terrible sinner. I'd sinned against God, and I'd made my life nothing but hell. But Jesus came along, and he saw me at my worst, and he told me about a love of God that was for sinners like me, even me. The forgiveness was mine to receive. and that this was the good news that he himself, this man Jesus, came to bring, having been sent from God. Well, I know that this man Jesus has to be a prophet. He has to be a very holy man, and he would never have taken advantage of me because his love for me was so real, so innocent, so unlike any other men that I knew who spoke of love, but they only wanted my body and nothing else. And that conversation changed me, and I began to see myself as forgiven, as a free person, free to leave the dark life and live for something beautiful and truthful that was found in the message that this deliverer gave me. And so I wanted to say thank you to him. I wanted to see him again. And I overheard the fact that he was on his way to Simon, the Pharisee's house, for a dinner invitation. Obviously, both of these religious teachers have something in common to discuss, but maybe I could find Jesus when he got there and I could express my gratitude to him for what he had done for me. So I went outside of Simon's house. I was waiting for Jesus to come, and Simon came out and tried to shoo me away. He said that we didn't need people like me hanging around his house. And I just told him, I said, I'm just waiting here for Jesus. I just want to see him for a second and tell him thank you for what he's done for me. Well, Simon must have had the wrong idea because suddenly his composure changed and he warmed up to the idea of me being there. I had a suspicion he was up to no good, but I wanted to see Jesus so badly. It didn't matter what this Simon thought. I would see Jesus, give him a big warm thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'd be gone. Simple, quick. I'd be out of Simon's hair, and it wouldn't matter what he thought of me anymore. Then Jesus showed up. But before I could say anything to him, Simon tells Jesus and me to come on in. I wasn't expecting an invite, and it sure felt strange, being a woman of my reputation, being invited into a holy man's house. We both entered. I was confused what was going on, but I was just thankful that I could be in Jesus' company again. We entered the main room where some of the other Pharisees, the religious teachers, were already sitting at the table. They looked like lions ready to pounce. Simon let us in, and he didn't even give us any water basin to clean our hands or feet, which was normal. I expected that from a cultured and religious man like Simon, but he ignored us. And as we sat down, I could sense that the meeting between these two rabbis was not as friendly as an encounter as I thought. Simon had this sneaky look on his face. And as he watched Jesus and I come in together, I felt maybe this was a trap. But again, it didn't matter. I had come to express my gratitude to Jesus, and that was what I intended to do. All of a sudden, the words that I had rehearsed in my mind 100 times that day left me. And I didn't know what to say. But noticing that Jesus and I had both entered the house and had been snubbed by not allowing to get our feet and hands washed, I decided I could show Jesus my gratitude and show him hospitality myself. So I knelt down at his feet and I opened up a little jar of perfume that I carried around with me. Very expensive stuff, but what a small sacrifice to make in order to say thank you to this man, Jesus. I put a little on his feet, and overwhelmed with emotion, I began to cry, and both the tears of sorrow for my previous sins, but tears of joy that I was forgiven and freed to a new life. They poured down my cheeks and onto his feet, mixing with the perfume that was there. I understood this was what true love is, and this is what God's love is. And I was ready to turn over a new leaf. The mixture of tears with perfume made Jesus' feet stunningly clean and smelling like $1 million. Perhaps my gesture would communicate to him how I really felt, and certainly Jesus would understand. And then without thinking, I did the unthinkable, even though it made total sense to me at the time. I took the pin out of my long hair that was held up on my head, and I let the hair down. I don't know what overtook me, but I felt this intimacy with Jesus. Not in the physical way that I had known with other men, but this was a true love. I wanted to show my devotion by being one of his followers too, that I was loyal enough and committed to him, that it was almost like being married to him. When a man and woman are courting, the man never sees her with her hair down until their wedding night. And so letting that hair down means that she's going to be a faithful wife and that all her love is his. So I let down my hair. There was nothing sexual to it. I just wanted to show my faithfulness and that my love for him and for what he stood for. My love for Jesus was more special than any other relationship I'd ever had with any other man, and I would devote my life to him and to his teachings. I appreciated his message of love and forgiveness, and I wanted to have that in my life and share it with others. I didn't care that Simon and the others were there watching, and as I dried Jesus' feet with my hair, I didn't feel any objection from Jesus, which made it all the more special. Maybe I was embarrassing him, I don't know, but I didn't care. I just knew that this was how I could express my thanks to him for rearranging my life. And so I wept and I kissed his feet over and over and I dried it with my hair. And I know I made a total scene. Then Jesus broke the silence and he told a little story to Simon about two men who owed money to a certain landowner. One owed just a little bit, 50 denarii, and the other owed a whole lot, 500. The landowner was gracious and forgave both of them their debts. It was an amazing story. And Jesus asked Simon a question. He said, which debtor would end up showing the most love and gratefulness to the landowner? Simon answered the way I would have said it too. Of course, the one with the larger debt. Jesus affirmed his answer and turned to me with the first words that was exchanged between us. He reminded me that my sins were forgiven. And then he chided Simon for not giving us a warm welcome and praised me for what I had done. Oh, I was so relieved knowing that Jesus had accepted my humble gift and my act of devotion. He really did understand me, as if he could read my mind and he knew my heart. Oh, Jesus did not disappoint. The other guests at the table continued to whisper judgments against me. Simon was on their side, and continuing to chide Simon, Jesus insinuated that because my sins were great, my love in return would be great too. He knew. He saved me, and now I live for him. What Simon meant for evil that night only reinforced the love and mercy of this Jesus and gave me a chance to respond with total abandon. I'm following you, Jesus, all the way. And now lastly, from the point of view of Jesus. Those Pharisees, they've been trying to trap me in their silly games, but they don't realize who they're dealing with. But let them try. Simon, one of the Pharisees, he invited me over for dinner. He made it sound like it was a very welcome invitation, but, I know his heart. He's just trying to trap me again, just like they keep trying to do. They're trying to discredit me. Whatever. I love them too, those Pharisees. Although they're a brood of vipers and they're leading people away from God by focusing on the law rather than love. But I accepted the invite. I knew what his heart was thinking, but I would show him that I did really care, and I would come. As I approached his home, I saw waiting outside the woman whom I'd spoken to the day before, a woman with a very bad reputation among the citizens of this village, but yet still very loved by God. I could tell she was hurting, and she regretted the choices she made, so I had told her that it didn't matter what excuses she had. The lost need to be found. And I found her at the bottom. Her heart was all ready to give up. I told her about the love of God and that in his name I had the authority to forgive her of her sins, and she was receptive to that message. She trusted me. And you could literally just see the heavy burdens fall from her shoulders as she jumped up in a dance like a jig, showing how she felt inside. She was quick to leave, wanting to go tell others about the new life that she had found. She didn't say thank you, but that wasn't the point. So when I saw her in front of Simon's house that night, I knew why she was there, to let me know of her gratitude. So I was glad to see her. But before we could say a word to one another, Simon came out, greeted me, and he nervously invited both of us, me and the woman, into his home. Inviting her, the unclean person, into his home? Wow, that was nothing that I would ever expected a religious teacher, a Pharisee, to ever do. Wow, if the others saw that, they would call him unclean, too. I already knew that Simon was up to no good, so it didn't matter. I knew how to turn this into a good situation. Simon let us both in, but he ignored the traditional hospitality of offering us water to wash our hands and feet. It was an obvious snub, considering us already unclean, to the extent he wouldn't even let us wash ourselves in his wash basin before dinner. I knew his heart. I knew that he had only invited me there to humiliate me, to try to trap me. And now he's including this new friend of mine in this trap. So when we came in, we sat down at the table, and immediately the woman sat down at my feet. She opened up this little jar of perfume and poured some of it on my feet. And quietly crying, her tears mixed with the perfume, and my feet were being washed with something better than the water that Simon could have offered me. The sincerity of her thankfulness was communicated through this act of humble devotion. This was her worship, and this was her acknowledgement that her life had changed. And then she did the unthinkable, letting down her hair. I knew that she wasn't flirting or being seductive, although I'm sure Simon and the others saw it like that. I knew her heart. She was telling me in a purely platonic way that the love of God had touched her life so profoundly that she was giving herself, body, mind, and soul, over to God. She wiped the mixture of tears and perfume with her hair. She kissed my feet softly, giving her full devotion totally. I'd never seen an act so profoundly wild, but yet so tender and true. Simon was watching all of this. He was horrified, and he was thinking, if this Jesus were really a prophet from God, then he would know who this woman is and why she's touching him, because she is a sinner, a very big sinner. That's what he was thinking. So I answered his candid thoughts and asked him permission to tell a story, to explain what was really going on here. I began with the story. A certain moneylender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii, the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now, which of them will love him more? And Simon answered, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt. I acknowledged his answer. You've judged rightly, Simon. And I looked down at the woman, and then I said to Simon, do you see this woman here? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time that I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You didn't anoint my head with oil, but she's anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little. Then turning to the woman, I reminded her of what I told her yesterday and what she was still longing to hear. 4 beautiful words. Your sins are forgiven. The other guests at the table were mystified by these words, even angry. And they began to whisper amongst themselves in astonishment that I would pronounce her sins forgiven. Obviously, they thought she had already gone too far in life and that forgiveness was impossible. I then told the woman, don't worry. You can go in peace. Your offering has been accepted on the basis of the mercy and grace that's been shown to her by the Almighty. I don't think Simon caught the part of the story when I said that both were forgiven. The debt of 50, the debt of 500. Small sins or large sins, it's all the same. I'm a God of grace, mercy, love, and forgiveness. The size of the sin or the length of the list is inconsequential. Simon might be on the short list, and forgiveness is there for him too, and he still needs it if he would lay down his pride and his judgment and accept the gift that I came to give.